Oh man, this is an emergency video because Jerome Powell and the ECB tried their best to crash the markets. I'm going to go through exactly what they said, but more importantly, how the markets are reacting, because the markets don't seem to be having any of it. We've got Bitcoin holding fairly stable here around the 19,200 mark. We've got the equity markets in the US rotating green at the time of recording this video, but Jerome Powell came out, as we expected, pretty hawkish. He came straight out and he made his remarks. As you can see, Fed Chair Powell vows to raise rates to fight inflation until the job is done. We saw this coming. We had this telegraphed. We knew he came out last week at Jackson Hole. He was very aggressive. Brainard, the vice chair, yesterday came across very aggressive too. And Jerome Powell was no difference. In fact, he said that he's going to continue to keep the noose around the neck of inflation. He's going to keep going until the job is done. We expected him to say that. More importantly, however, from a crypto perspective, he did speak to crypto specifically, with some of the highlights being we don't want to stay in the way of innovation, including digital innovation, but we think something like crypto, which is purporting to be money, would need to be appropriately regulated. He's also quoted as saying unbacked cryptocurrencies have not offered much in terms of public interest for payments. I thought that was pretty ironic, considering this is the guy who prints US dollars on a daily basis. Yes, but he thinks crypto is unbacked. He also spoke about how his family are rigorously trying to convince him of the value of crypto. So interesting to see he's got people in his own household who are realizing, because they have no agenda unlike him, that crypto is the place to be. So that was the update from Jerome Powell, but markets seem to be taking it in its stride. One thing which is affecting markets slightly more than Jerome Powell, and rightly so, is the European Central Bank, the ECB's decision to raise rates by 75 basis points. Yes, they're following suit after the US to try to bring inflation down. Eurozone inflation is sitting at 9.1% at the moment. They raised from minus 0.5. Yes, they were in minuses, guys, since 2014 to zero. They've been at zero for a month or so, and now they're going for that 75 basis points. So they're going to have a 75 basis points interest rate going forward from now. Again, they're trying to do the same thing as the US. Balance between trying to bring inflation down without driving their economy into a recession. And speaking of that fine balancing beam, the US just had their new jobless claim figure come out today, which is showing a 3-month low. Yes, it came out at 222,000 new jobless claims, which is a 3-month low. In other words, people are still finding jobs. The market is really tight. The labor market is really tight. And what that means is that Jerome Powell has further impetus and further permission to go ahead with his rate hikes. And you can see the market is aggressively pricing this in. Now, this increases every day we look at it. It's now sitting at 85% of the market pricing in 75 basis points. And the question now is, will the market start to try pricing in 100 basis points? We were speaking about this on our live stream yesterday. Will it start to rotate towards pricing that in, or is it going to sit here with the 75 basis points? I think Jerome Powell is going to go with 75 basis points, but we have one key figure standing in the way of that, and that is coming September the 13th, the CPI reading. Incidentally, this is coming out around the same time as the ETH 2.0 merge. And the question is, what do you think is going to have a bigger impact on the markets? This CPI reading, which the markets are eagerly awaiting for to find out if we have two improving months on CPI, that's going to be huge, or this ETH 2.0 merger. I think, unless there's a catastrophic fail on ETH 2.0, I think the CPI reading is far more important. I know for you diehards out there, this might sound crazy, but you need to understand how the flows of institutional money work and how powerful it is that when risk is off, what a pressure this puts on Bitcoin, okay? So once that is alleviated, once we can start bringing risk back on, which, by the way, is going to happen when CPI shows regular improvements, such that Jerome Powell can say, I'm going to pause rate hikes, then that's going to have a huge impact on the markets and signal our move to the upside. Let's take a look at the Bitcoin price before I give you a couple of more interesting updates. On the 5-minute chart here, guys, Bitcoin's trying to break out from this falling wedge. I did mention this in this morning's video. This is a bullish pattern. When you have a falling wedge, it's more likely to break to the upside with a price target of about the 19,500 range. We'll keep an eye on that pattern. But zooming out, when we come back into our 4-hourly chart and bring out our EMA ribbon, this is what I want us to focus on. Because as I said very clearly, we can run into our EMA ribbon, but I'm expecting resistance to come from this. right? It's very difficult for us to go and turn our EMA ribbon bullish. We'd have to be above 19,800-ish. But I'm expecting the bears to come back in with the next push to the downside. We'll have to keep an eye on the wider markets. US markets are trying to shrug off the whole ECB drama and the fears of interest rates. You can see Dow Jones up 0.6, 0.72 on the S&P, and the NASDAQ, which is the most important for us to look at, is up 0.85. This was up about a percentage point when I started recording this video, so we're getting a slight fall to the downside. Let's now take a look here at a few other bits of information which are really important. And Coinbase is funding the lawsuit against the US Treasury around the Tornado Cash saga. For those of you who aren't familiar, I've made a video on it, go check it. But Tornado Cash, which is a decentralized privacy mechanism for people to make their transactions private, was sanctioned by the US, and any address linked to it was sanctioned. So now Coinbase is funding a lawsuit back at the US Treasury for blacklisting Tornado Cash. This is huge. I was sitting there wondering who is going to take the corner of the decentralized apps. Who's going to be there to fend for these people? Because we know that the founder of Tornado Cash was arrested, right? He was arrested. And who's going to back these people when they've done nothing wrong? They've built a platform which is used by many people for legitimate use cases. And if a few people want to use it for nefarious activities, you go and arrest a developer of a decentralized protocol. Insane. I'm glad that Coinbase, props to them for taking this and standing up for what's going on. Also, 3 senior executives jumped from BlockFi ahead of the FTX proposed acquisition. Interesting to see that their global institutional distribution head, David Olson, head of private clients, and senior institutional sales director are leaving the company. This makes sense, right? If you're going to be acquired by a company like FTX, they already have these positions and better people at those positions at their company. So the whole point of merging 2 big companies like that is you strip out the excess fat, you make it more lean, and you run the business more operationally efficiently. And that's no surprise here to see them leaving. The question is, where are they going to go to next? Which other exchanges can they go to? We've also had GameStop, interesting partnership with the FTX. I guess it was a bit more exciting when I read that they had a partnership with FTX, but when I read it, it looks like you'll just be able to buy an FTX gift card at the GameStop stores. Again, I'm not in the US, so I don't know how proliferated GameStop shops are, but I'm assuming they are. And I guess once the bull market starts to come back into play, maybe these gift cards can be a good idea, right? To bring more people into crypto. So I'm not averse to this. I think it's a good idea. I think there's many people who struggle to get fiat currency onto their exchanges for some reason on their phone. Maybe they could go buy a gift card and scratch a coupon and enter a number, and maybe that makes it more efficient for them. Whatever brings more people into cryptocurrency, I'm all for that. So we need to keep a close eye on the markets. We've got CPI reading coming out on September the 13th. Then a week later, the FOMC meeting. Those are the main catalysts right now. The question now is, will the bears, from a technical perspective, try to then send us back down to the downside? Are they going to come in for the next leg? Or are they going to let the bulls run a little bit higher up towards the top of the EMA ribbon? Remember, until you flip this EMA ribbon bullish, this is in control by the bears, right? And if I flip on over to the daily, it's even more so, okay? So you can see here from the daily, even if Bitcoin ran up to its EMA ribbon up around 21,000, bears are still in control. So let's not get confused, guys. We had this consolidation here. Everybody got excited. We barely touched that EMA ribbon, thrown to the downside. Went into our symmetrical triangle pattern here. Everybody got excited. We were nowhere near our EMA ribbon, and the bears continued to downside. So let's respect the bears. Let's understand that we're holding some support at this channel, but at any time, the bears can go on their second leg and push us back down to test that 17,600 level. Now, let's also take a look at the dollar index. The dollar index is leading a lot of this charge. And remember, the dollar index thrives in uncertainty. When the whole world is struggling, when we're seeing inflation, when we're seeing difficulties around the world, people flock to here for safety. And that is why we're seeing dollar index continue from strength to strength, as you can see here on the daily chart. And the question really is, on this daily chart, will it decide to have a couple of days of calling off? Just like it did here, at some point, dollar index will want to call off. And at that point, Bitcoin will have its moment of upside. But you do not want to be chasing those green candles on Bitcoin. That's just the dollar index calling off. What's more interesting, and when it's going to become fascinating, is what we nearly had here, which is when the dollar index flips its EMA ribbon bearish, closes below the EMA ribbon, and starts its bigger move to the downside. That is what we're waiting for. But that is not going to come until the market feels a lot more confident, until we see things start to resolve itself, until we start to see CPI in the US come down, until we start to see CPI in the Eurozone come down, until we see some improving in the relationships between Ukraine and Russia, and that's starting to de-escalate. These are the things that will help us start moving risk back on from where it is right now, which is hugely off. Now, zooming into the smaller time frame here on the 4-hourly, you can see what's happened, right? The reason that Bitcoin's holding up pretty well here at 19,200 is because the dollar index here over the last couple of 4-hourly candles has come back down to collect support from its EMA ribbon, but I do expect it to come back and post a higher high, and that's what we're seeing here. We're in a big upward trend, so there's nothing to suggest we're just going to suddenly flip and start heading back down to the downside. So when you see these legs of dollar index cooling off, Bitcoin will be having nice moves to the upside, but the key thing is, when is it going to go on a long-term downward trend? And you can see that from the weekly chart, right? Weekly chart, when we zoom out, these big legs down to the downside for dollar index have categorized a really big move on crypto. So until we're ready to have that, we're not going to see massive moves on crypto, okay? So look at that, insane, absolutely insane green candles here from dollar index. The last 3-4 weeks there have been insane, and that's what's been the nail in the coffin for Bitcoin right now and why we are struggling. So there you have it, guys. That was exactly what Jerome Powell and Christine Lagarde over at the ECB have been up to today in the markets. If you guys haven't watched my video on Polygon Matic, take a few minutes to go watch that here, because you're not going to want to miss my thoughts on this project. Let me know what you think in the comments over there. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.